17 spine-chilling Walmart encounters. Terrifying secrets revealed after midnight. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Sarah trudged down the back aisle of Willow Creek's Walmart, dust settling in the cold air like a shroud. The ticking clock read 12:01 a.m., and the store felt alive and unnervingly quiet. It was a late-night shift, her way of making ends meet as a weary single mother. But tonight? Tonight something felt off, deeply off. She was restocking when she stumbled upon a hidden door almost swallowed in shadows. Heart racing, she hesitated. That sudden thrill of curiosity drew her to it like a moth to a flame. This ragged door creaked open reluctantly, revealing a dimly lit room filled with boxes that hadn't seen daylight in years. Dust swirled in the stale air, and goosebumps rippled across her skin. She stepped inside cautiously, the cold seeping through her uniform as she noticed a monitor flickering against the far wall. The moment she pressed the button, grainy footage flickered to life. It was horrifying. Faces, familiar faces, missing persons from Willow Creek flashed before her, the townsfolk who were once pillars of the community. The screen lit up with grainy images of people she thought she'd known, their pleas for help hauntingly echoing in her mind. A chill gripped Sarah's heart. The town she had trusted was entwined in dark secrets she never fathomed. What the hell? Her voice trembled. Suddenly, uneasy whispers rustled through the shadows, a faint chorus that clawed at her sanity. She turned her head, tension rooting her to the spot. Employees she often shared laughs with started to vanish from her memory, leaving gaping holes where camaraderie once thrived. Instead, the place felt heavy now, shadows lurking just out of her sight, refusing to reveal themselves. Panic washed over her like an icy wave. "Tommy?" she murmured, glancing toward the entrance as her son had come along tonight too. He had started talking about dreams that sent shivers down her spine, the stranger watching them in the aisles. Flickers of movement darted past her vision. Anyone would write it off as fatigue, right? But the weight in her gut told her differently. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Breath quickening, Sarah's fingers trembled as she dug through paperwork. It connected the dots, unraveling ties between the vanished and old folklore steeped in Appalachian shadows. Stories she had dismissed in childhood began resurfacing now, spirits that preyed upon the forgotten. The lights overhead flickered. Was that a warning or a promise? Anxiety gnawed at her, an unwelcome companion. Suddenly, Tommy rushed in, eyes wide, face pale. "Mom!" he whispered, shaking. "The stranger's here! I saw him!" Panic coursed through her veins. She grabbed his small hand, feeling a surge ripple through her. The store vibrated with a thick, unnatural energy. Every flicker felt like a countdown, whispering threats woven into the night. Sarah glanced back at the hidden door, knowing deep down, whatever lay beyond it was now impossible to ignore. Was it too late to escape the chilling truth? The darkness seemed to close in, tightening around them as uncertainty loomed, growing heavier in the air while Sarah braced herself. The clock ticked, and with time slipping away, the choice became increasingly deadly. Would she stand against the darkness, or would she drown in it, lost forever? The answer hung in the air, taunting her like an echo waiting to unleash terror. A chill coursed through Sarah's bones as she pulled Tommy close, his small frame trembling against her. The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry wasps, shadows pooling in the corners of the dim room. The hidden door loomed behind her like a gateway to hell, and without the comfort of her coworkers' laughter, the emptiness pressed heavily against her chest. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice barely breaking through the buzzing silence. She led Tommy down the aisle, pulse racing, thoughts colliding. Could they really be in danger? Or was it just her imagination running wild? Up ahead, a rustling sound made her stop dead in her tracks. There it was again, a soft dragging, punctuated by sporadic whispers. The hairs on Sarah's arms stood up, adrenaline sending surges through her veins. "Tommy, don't move," she warned, gripping his hand tighter. They crept forward, eyes darting in every direction, searching for the source of the sinister noise. The once familiar aisles transformed around them, cold, oppressive. The playful cereal box characters seemed to glare, mocking their dread. Had she always thought that bright red box looked frightening? "Mom, I don't like this. Can we go?" Tommy's plea echoed her own desire to flee, but dread chained her feet to the ground. Suddenly, the lights blinked out, plunging them into darkness. A gasp slipped from Sarah's lips as she dragged Tommy behind a towering stack of boxes. The darkness swirled like living smoke, pressing in tight. Then she heard a slow, deliberate breathing, just on the edge of hearing, a faint whoosh that seemed to slice through the suffocating air. With every gasp, it grew louder. Something was out there, watching, waiting. "Who's there?" she called, forcing the trembling words out, but only silence answered her, a thick, oppressive silence that sat heavy in her chest. "Mom," Tommy whimpered, his small voice cracking. She held him, feeling her heart race. They needed to find a way out. She glanced back at the door they came from, but it felt like a distant memory, swallowed by fear. The store shouldn't be this quiet. It shouldn't feel like a tomb. "Let us go, we can find an exit," Sarah said, gathering her courage as she tugged him forward. They moved cautiously, each step feeling like a countdown to calamity. The store stretched before them, twisted and sinister, aisles shifting like a wicked maze. She could sense it, the malevolence swirled around them, alive, hungry. Suddenly, a figure flickered into view at the end of the aisle, tall, dark, and impossibly still. The stranger, dressed in tattered clothes with hollow eyes, seemed almost part of the shadows, its presence grating against Sarah's instincts. Her breath hitched in her throat. Was it real? Or just a trick of the mind? "Mom, please," Tommy whispered, fear evident in his tone. But before Sarah could reassure him, the stranger moved, gliding down the aisle with an unnatural grace, like a predator stalking its prey. Panic ignited within her. They needed to run now. "Turn around!" she screamed, pulling Tommy away from the approaching figure. They dashed deeper into the store, guided only by sheer instinct as adrenaline fueled their flight. With every step, the whispers grew stronger, a cacophony that wrapped around them like chains. But as they darted into the electronics section, the glare of screens flickered to life, illuminating their surroundings. And what they saw froze them in their tracks. Reflected on each screen was the missing townsfolk, their faces twisted in terror, mouthing silent screams that pierced through the air. "Mom! What is happening?" Tommy cried, backing away. Sarah's eyes widened. The stranger was no longer far off. He was looming closer now, a ravenous smile splitting his shadowed face. "Time to join us," he hissed, his voice a low rumble that reverberated through her very bones. As the walls seemed to close in, Sarah's heart pounded furiously against her ribcage. It felt like the grip of death was tightening, squeezing out every ounce of hope. "Run! Just run!" she shouted, snatching Tommy's hand again and bursting into the heart of the store. But where could they escape? The exits felt miles away, the air thick with dread. With each hurried step, Sarah realized they were racing against something she couldn't understand, but she knew, deep down, whatever awaited them in the shadows wanted more than just their fear. In a town rich with dark whispers, how could she ever know which shadows to trust? And as they ducked into the frozen food aisle, stark fluorescent lights faltered above, plunging them again into darkness. They were trapped, prey in a hunt that had begun long before they ever set foot in the store. The question nagged at her, would they be just the latest faces to join the haunting images trapped on the screens? The only answer came in the form of the echoing whispers, louder now, promising that the night was far from over. Deafening silence enveloped them again, pressing against Sarah's ears like a physical weight. The familiar hum of the freezer units became a distant memory, replaced by an oppressive stillness that shrouded them in thick shadows. She gripped Tommy's hand tighter, every instinct screaming for her to protect him, to shield him from whatever horrors lingered in the dark. "Stay behind me," she whispered, feeling the tremor in her own voice. Tommy clung to her, his breathing quick and shallow, a small furnace of anxiety radiating against her side. They were vulnerable, exposed, and dread coiled tightly around her heart. As they remained frozen in silence, the whispers slowly merged into a cacophony of hissing voices, swirling around them, growing louder and more insistent. With each passing moment, a chilling sensation crawled down her spine. She couldn't discern the words, but the tones screamed of torment and despair. Then, a soft thud echoed from somewhere nearby, sending Sarah's heart racing. They couldn't stay here, they had to move. She risked a glance at the flickering lights attempting to illuminate the frozen labyrinth. Shadows danced across the aisle, mocking her determination to escape. "Let us go," Sarah urged, her voice barely breaking the oppressive darkness. They hurried deeper into the aisle, the icy air gnawing at their skin. She prayed they'd find an exit soon. Suddenly, the fluorescent lights flickered to life again, illuminating the end of the frozen aisle, casting sharp, eerie shadows that flickered like candle flames. Tommy gasped. At the far end, a figure loomed, half illuminated and half shrouded in darkness. It was the same stranger, the one with hollow eyes and that predatory smile, his body contorted at impossible angles, as if he didn't exist in the same realm as they did. "Come closer," he beckoned, his voice like gravel, slithering through the air. It was enticing yet full of menace all at once, drawing Sarah toward him as if against her will. "No! Don't!" she shouted, but her words crumbled in the heavy air. Ignoring her screams, the figure took a step forward, and ground beneath him seemed to buckle slightly. The frozen floors felt alive, shifting beneath their feet, as if in anticipation of the feast to come. The nudge in the frigid air became a surge of energy, pushing her and Tommy back. She turned sharply, pulling Tommy with her. "We need to go now," she screamed, her voice cracking as terror clawed at her throat. But the endless maze stretched before them, a distorted world where each aisle seemed to transform, wrapping them tighter in its grip. "Mom! I'm scared." Tommy's voice was a shrill gust of wind slicing through her resolve. She felt a terrifying mix of despair and fury rise within her, strange emotions fighting for dominance as she searched for a way out. "Stay close," she repeated, though the confidence was fading fast. They sprinted toward the back of the store, the lights above flickering with their frantic movements. She could feel something sinister trailing behind them, weaving through the darkness, just beyond her line of sight. Each twist and turn felt like a descent into madness. They rounded a corner and stumbled into the toy section, newly vibrant, as if the colors themselves taunted them with vibrant innocence against the horrors around. But here, too, the spirits of the night echoed softly, forgotten toys twisted into grotesque shapes, eyes wide in manic laughter. "Tommy, look at me. Focus on my voice," Sarah commanded, forcing calm. But it felt silly now, a futile attempt against the eerie landscape of their reality. Beside them, shining eyes glinted from the shadows, little red dots glowing in the dark. Was it the eyes of broken toys? Or something far worse? Turning back, she glanced at the end of the aisle. The stranger was gone, replaced by an even larger figure looming just beyond the haze of darkness, its breath a low growl vibrating through the air. A primal instinct kicked in. This was survival now. "Run! Just run!" she cried again, shoving her way past the skeletal remains of playhouses and stuffed animals, as that gut-wrenching feeling grew inside her. The air charged with tension as the darkness whispered promises of doom and despair behind them. They bolted ahead, propelled by sheer adrenaline, deeper into the nightmarish labyrinth that seemed to expand infinitely. But as they reached a dead end, the bright exit sign flickered erratically above them, almost mocking their struggles. The exit was within sight, yet miles away, a glimmering hope encased in foreboding shadows. "Mom, help!" Tommy cried, pulling her back as the darkness loomed in closer, seams of reality splitting apart like torn fabric. A deafening crash resonated behind them as the shelves began to shift and topple, like an avalanche of impending doom plunging toward them. Desperation clawed at Sarah's throat. There was no choice left. The chase wasn't just between them and that creature anymore. It was against time itself, against the crushing weight of nightmares made flesh. With a swift grasp, she yanked Tommy down onto the floor, avoiding the falling debris just as the walls of the aisle twisted and contorted around them. "Hold on tight," she shouted, as if there was any semblance of safety left out. In that moment, she realized what if the darkness wasn't just an enemy, but something waiting for them at the end of their journey. What if it had been guiding their steps all along, and as the store creaked and groaned, the shadows deepened, swallowing all light in their embrace. What awaited them just beyond the exit lurked in the unknown. With bated breath, they charged forward, hearts pounding. Was this the end, or merely the beginning? The moment they burst into the open, Sarah felt a rush of panic as the exit sign flickered once more before it plunged into darkness. The cold air outside hit them like a wave, but as she pulled Tommy out of the store, a suffocating numbness washed over her. They stumbled onto the gravel parking lot, spilling out from the mouth of the nightmare. But relief didn't last. The night stretched before them, vast and empty, with silhouettes of abandoned cars looming around them. A chill crept over their skin, and the darkness didn't seem to recede. It followed them, wrapping around their ankles like creeping vines. "Where do we go?" Tommy asked, his small voice trembling, barely audible over the deafening silence that surrounded them. Sarah scanned the area, heart pounding. "The car, let's get to the car," she managed, though uncertainty clawed at her throat. They had parked far from the entrance, swallowed by the surrounding shadows. Her pace quickened, dragging Tommy along behind her, his little feet barely keeping up. A rustling sound echoed from the nearby bushes, a faint whisper that made her stop dead in her tracks. The darker the night grew, the more her skin prickled with unease. "Did you hear that?" she breathed, doing her best to sound steady. Tommy nodded, his grip tightening around her hand. "It sounded like something." "Keep moving," she urged, stepping forward cautiously. They crossed through the rows of vehicles, each one casting long, ominous shadows that seemed to extend toward them. Their old sedan waited at the far end, but as they drew nearer, Sarah felt a sickening pit in her stomach. Just as they reached the car, a figure darted past them, dark and swift. "What was that?" Tommy squeaked, pressing against her leg, his eyes wide with terror. "I don't know," she whispered, forcing herself to breathe through the fear clawing at her heart. "We need to get inside." With frantic haste, she fumbled for the keys in her pocket, hands shaking. Where was the car alarm, the familiar chirp that felt like a safety net in this unreal nightmare? Dread pulled in the space between her ribs as she realized there was only silence. As she inserted the key, her breath caught in her throat. The headlights blinked weakly, then died. Darkness rushed in, suffocating. "No, no, no!" she hissed, panic flaring. Without warning, the driver's side door creaked open, swinging wildly. Inside the car, shadows danced, and she caught movement, tiny hands reaching, grasping. But then they were gone, leaving only the echo of their presence. Tommy gasped. "Mom! Get down!" Sarah pulled him close, crouching low as they dodged behind the car, heart racing. "Stay quiet." She felt the frozen air bite at her, but a fire ignited within her. But silence didn't last long. A low growl reverberated from the darkness, heavy and threatening. Her skin pricked with tension as she listened, each sound magnified. Did she hear footsteps, or was it another whispering promise of despair? "What's happening?" Tommy whimpered, looking into her eyes. "I don't know," she admitted, voice tight. "But we can't stay here." They peered around the car, and for a heartbeat, she thought she saw the stranger at the edge of the lot. His predatory smile stretched wide in the shadows, a grotesque mask of anticipation. She looked back at Tommy, his innocence reflected in his eyes, vibrant and stark against the threat closing in around them. "Mom, I'm scared," he uttered, his voice trembling. "Me too," she admitted, new resolve sinking deep. "But we're going to get out of this. Trust me." They moved around the car, but the atmosphere thickened, a palpable dread hanging like fog. The growling grew near, and she felt pressure build in the very air around them. What was pursuing them? A creature of nightmares or something woven from the shadows themselves? Then, in a single horrifying blink, all the night's energy tensed. The figure was closer now, just a few feet away, emerging from the blackness like a nightmare-given form. "Come here," it beckoned with that gravelly voice, low and dripping with sinister allure. "Run!" Sarah shouted, her instincts kicking in as she yanked Tommy to his feet. They darted toward the end of the aisle between cars, the exit line vanishing behind them. With fleeting hope, they broke through the last stretch, out into the street. Her heart thundered in her ears, adrenaline fueling her as they raced into the night. But just as they picked up speed, she stumbled over something in the road. Looking back, she caught sight of the large creature emerging from the shadows, its breath a chilling fog on the air. A moment of desperation clawed within her. One thought pressed fiercely, where to run, and just then, the world erupted in chaos as the earth itself beneath them began to tremble. What was chasing them? What would they find if they could outrun this terror in the night? The darkness pulled at their heels, threatening to swallow them whole, and every instinct screamed they were far from safe. They surged forward, their breaths quick and frantic, but as they reached the end of the parking lot, a tremor rippled through the ground, like the pulse of some unseen beast. Sarah's heart raced, an instinctive terror coursing through her veins. She skidded to a halt, pulling Tommy close as she surveyed the street ahead. The asphalt shimmered under a flickering street lamp, but the light was weakening, a stuttered fight against the encroaching darkness. Anxiety gnawed at her as she noticed something just beyond the light, a dark figure standing in the shadows. The shape shifted, its form elusive, but its eyes glowed like twin coals. "Mom!" Tommy's voice was barely a whisper, and she could feel his body trembling against hers. It was a primal fear, the kind that wrapped around you and squeezed, unrelenting. "Stay close to me," she ordered, taking a step back toward the car. The back of her mind swirled with the image of the creature behind them, an urgency rising as the ground trembled again. They had to move. "Where do we go?" Tommy questioned, panic lacing his tone. "There." She pointed, instinctively identifying the small wedge of trees beyond the parking lot. It seemed like a refuge cloaked in danger, but they had no choice. "We're going to make it to the trees." They took off again, but as Sarah sprinted, something heavy and dark slithered across her periphery. A growl surged from the void, low and foreboding, a sound that resonated deep within her bones. She dared a glance back. The creature from before, now fully materialized, was hot on their trail, its maw twisted into a grotesque grin. "Run faster!" she screamed, her feet pounding against the pavement, urgency propelling them forward. Branches clawed at them as they darted into the grove, tangling in their clothes, pulling them back. "Don't stop!" she cried, but the underbrush was thick, roots snaking out like skeletal fingers threatening to trip them. Tommy lost his footing and tumbled to the ground, losing his grip on her hand. "Mom!" His cry echoed through the trees, piercing the thick silence. "No!" Sarah whirled around, the weight of terror settling into her stomach as she reached down for him, her fingers grazing his shoulder. But in that moment, the world seemed to turn gray. The creature's growl was louder now, a rasping promise of despair. Before she could pull him up, a sudden stillness enveloped them. The night was devoid of sound, as if the universe held its breath. Sarah froze in place, darkness closing in around them. "Tommy, stay right here," she whispered fiercely, scanning the shadows. The glow of eyes blinked from the depths of the trees, watching, waiting. The silence shattered as the creature lunged at them, all matted fur and jagged teeth. Just at that moment, a sickening scent filled her nostrils like rot and decay. "Run!" she screamed again, her heart pounding with a desperation she had never known. They dipped deeper into the trees, but branches clawed at her arms, ripping through the fabric of her shirt. She stumbled, pulling Tommy close to her chest. "Hold on tight." The creature's growl echoed behind them, a sound that echoed in the hollow parts of her mind. Each footfall thudded like a heartbeat, and they weaved through the trees, branches snapping beneath their weight. The tension of the chase buzzed in her ears, louder than her own heartbeat. Then everything shifted. They broke out of the trees and into a clearing, moonlight flooding down like a spotlight. But the relief was short-lived. In the center of the clearing stood a dilapidated well, its edges overgrown with vines, the bottom dark and foreboding. Mom, what is that? Tommy peered into the well, his little face pale. This is not good, she muttered, adrenaline rushing through her. Something was wrong, like an unseen hand reached out, beckoning them closer, inviting them to peer into the dark abyss. But as she turned to look back, the creature was there, mere feet away, its glistening eyes piercing the night. She could feel the panic claw at her throat, the very air thick with dread. Go! She yelled, shoving Tommy ahead of her as she prepared to face whatever fate awaited them. The shadows shifted, and she could only hope for an escape from the clutches of darkness, and whatever lurked just beyond the reach of the moonlight. What if the well is a way out? Tommy's voice trembled, half-ridden with hope. What if it's worse? She shot back, every nerve in her body sparking with fear. As they made their stand, the growling escalated, reverberating through the clearing like an unholy laughter. With the creature looming closer and the dread of the well almost overwhelming her senses, Sarah gripped Tommy's hand tighter. I'll protect you, she promised, even as doubt began to curl around her resolve. She could feel the cold embrace of terror, creeping closer, reminding her how fragile their hope felt in that moment. But what if there was nowhere left to run? Behind them, shadows moved, and darkness thickened. The ground beneath them shivered again. Could they truly escape this nightmare, or was surrender to the void their only option? The growl intensified, a guttural sound reverberating through the clearing, as if the creature's very essence echoed from the ground itself. Sarah felt the hairs on her neck rise, instinctively knowing they were trapped in a nightmarish game, the dark figure steady and unrelenting in its pursuit. Mom! Tommy whimpered again, eyes wide with terror, taking a small step back. As the creature edged closer, its silhouette looming against the dim light of the moon, she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Get behind me! She shouted, pulling him to her side. The thumping in her chest was deafening now. She had to think. There had to be a way out. But the well. The dark well beckoned like a gaping mouth ready to swallow them whole. We need a plan, she mumbled, thoughts racing. If they didn't act soon, there'd be nothing left to protect. The growl morphed into a snarl, sharp and cruel, slicing through the night. The creature seemed to relish their fear, inching forward with deliberate slowness, its claws glistening ominously in the fading light. Each step it took echoed a promise, and her resolve threatened to dissolve in the face of such horror. What's wrong with it? Tommy whispered, clutching her hand tightly. Why is it doing this? Because it can, Tommy. Her voice cracked. Because it wants to. The creature lunged suddenly, snapping its massive jaws, the sound like cracking bone. Sarah barely had time to shove Tommy away from its grasping maw as she dove instinctively toward the well. Desperation surged through her, igniting the last remnants of courage. Jump in if you have to, she cried, hoping against hope that within those ancient stones lay some salvation. But doubt twisted her stomach, knotting it tighter. Could it be worse than what hunted them now? Each instinct screamed at her to run, but they were pinned by fear and uncertainty. Sarah stepped forward, her breath seizing in her throat as she peered into the abyss of the well. It was dark, impossibly dark, like staring into a void that threatened to devour her soul. She heard whispers rising from the depths, incoherent and foreign, but laced with woven threads of despair. Mom, I can't! Tommy sobbed. I can't go in there. His face was pale, and the little chest heaved with silent terror. In that heartbeat of time, a choice loomed heavy between them. Fight or flight. But the creature was inching closer, its breath hot and fetid. The reality struck Sarah. Whatever came next could seal their fates forever. Tommy, listen to me, she said, trying to sound strong when all she felt was fear. We won't let it take us. We fight together, okay? He nodded, uncertainty still dancing in his wide eyes, but something in her tone resonated. They stepped back, inching towards the well but not letting go of each other. The creature reared back, sensing their hesitation, its growl replaced by a low, mocking chuckle that sent chills crawling down Sarah's spine. Please, she whispered, tears stinging her eyes, give us a chance. Its eyes flashed in the darkness, and for a moment, just a moment, She thought she saw intelligence behind that brutal facade. It answered with another growl, more menacing now, and surged forward, closing the distance, spitting shards of malice and bloodlust in every direction. "Now!" she yelled, shoving Tommy toward the well's edge as she prepared to confront the unspeakable horror barreling toward them. But then, an unexpected sound erupted from the trees, a branch snapping. From the thicket, a new force emerged, a flicker of silver brief under the moonlight. "What is that?" she thought frantically, torn between the well, the creature, and now a new presence. Just as the creature lunged, jaws wide, something else charged into the clearing. Raw dread flooded her senses. What had come to their aid? And was it friend or foe? Her heart raced with the prospect of hope mixed with the terror of uncertainty. In that moment suspended between despair and surprise, Sarah realized their fate might hinge not on their own actions, but on whatever intruder had stepped into their hell. And the question loomed large: could this new entity ignite their chance for survival, or draw them deeper into the shadows? "Tommy! Behind me!" she yelled, feeling the air thick with impending doom. The unknown was upon them, and they were running out of time. The blur of movement caught Sarah off guard. The creature hesitated, its snarl compounded by confusion. The new entity was almost a ghost in the moonlight, silver fur gleaming like a beacon of hope. But Sarah couldn't let herself breathe just yet. "What is that?" Tommy's small voice trembled from behind her. The flicker stepped forward, a lithe figure with fierce eyes, crouched low, its body taut like a spring. "Stay close to me," Sarah ordered, her throat tight. The creature watched, its attention divided. As the silver figure crouched and hissed, an echo of something deep within Sarah stirred. Was this beast here to help them? Or was it merely another player in this nightmarish game? The shadow of the creature loomed larger. A violent growl erupted, shaking the leaves as it charged again. Just as it lunged, the silver entity exploded into action, darting forward with supernatural speed. The two beasts collided with a bone-crunching impact. Tommy screamed. Sarah pressed her hands over her ears, but the sickening sound of combat pierced through the din of her terror. Fur, claws, and flesh intertwined in a chaotic dance of life and death. "Mom!" Tommy cried, and she didn't dare look back, her instincts screaming at her to stay focused, keep fighting, keep running. The silver beast tumbled back, but it quickly regained its footing, snarling defiantly. Its eyes carried intelligence, a wild light burning in the depths. While the shadows of the creature flanked their movements, it became clear that this new presence was not just a predator, it was a fighter, maybe even a guardian. Tommy trembled next to her, but Sarah felt something else, a sliver of hope igniting. "We can't just stand here," she shouted. "We have to move." "Where?" he whimpered, glancing at the clawing mass of fur and fangs before them. "To the trees." "Move!" she yelled, grabbing his hand and pulling him toward the tree-line. They dashed sideways, adrenaline propelling them further from the battle, but their egress was thwarted by a vine that licked forward like a serpent. Sarah stumbled and fell, tugging Tommy down with her as the creature roared, angry and feral. The silver figure spiraled back toward them, its movements fluid and fierce, sharp fangs bared. It darted past them, slamming into the larger creature once again. The two beasts crashed into the nearby trees, branches splintering beneath their weight. "Get up!" Sarah urged, her heart racing. They hastily scrambled to their feet, but her eyes were locked on the chaos. Every bone in her body screamed to flee, but she hesitated, transfixed by the ferocity of the battle. Whoever or whatever that silver entity was, it had summoned up a force she could barely fathom. The ground shook beneath her feet as Sarah felt a tremor of uncertainty. What if they stayed? What if the creature won? If the silver figure failed Mom? Tommy whispered urgently, clutching her arm. Okay, breathe, she said, forcing calm into her voice, though each rapid heartbeat echoed dread. The fight was reaching a climax. The creature was losing patience, and its growls sent spikes of adrenaline through her veins. "Now!" she shouted, dashing toward the trees with Tommy at her side. They ducked and weaved through the underbrush as the sound of claws scraping against the bark split the air behind them. She had to keep moving, had to survive. But the shadows were stirring. She glimpsed movement in the brush, more figures lurking, watching. Sarah's heart dropped into her stomach. Were there more like it? More dangers waiting? Get down, she said, pulling Tommy behind a thick trunk. They huddled together, hearts pounding, listening as the noises of the battle faded into the background, replaced by the low sounds of something creeping closer. And then came a chilling rustle, so close she could smell the rot in the air. It was all around them, a palpable sense of hunger, a presence inching in like a fog. Mom, what is that? Tommy whispered, fear tightening his voice. I don't know. She felt the claustrophobic weight of the shadows closing in around them, inching closer. There was no escaping in this darkness, and then they heard it. A whisper, soft yet insistent. It echoed from all directions, weaving through the trees. Join us. What did that mean? Who were they? Sarah's breath caught. The enigma of it all sent icy fingers crawling down her spine. She gripped Tommy tighter, petrified. Mom, we have to go, Tommy squeaked as the whispers grew louder, thrumming a dark rhythm only they could hear. Then the shadows shifted again, drawing closer. The air was thick with dread, and Sarah's mind raced as something deep within her stirred a warning, a premonition, something that told her they were far from safe. Whatever you do, don't move, she hissed, barely able to keep her voice steady. What had come for them, and why did it want them to join? The whispers tightened their grip, and as the darkness curled around them, Sarah felt the world teetering on the brink of a new horror, ready to consume them both. Silence pressed in like a weight, heavy and suffocating. The whispers surrounded them, a chilling symphony that thrummed against Sarah's ears. Each syllable coiled around her heart, tightening like a noose. Join us. The voice swirled with a seduction that made Sarah's skin crawl. Who were they? What did they want from them? The danger seeped through the trees, and prickling fear danced along her spine. She squeezed Tommy's hand, feeling the tiny tremors shake him. Breathe, Tommy, she murmured, though her own breath felt like shards of glass. Something flickered in the darkness, something other. She turned her head, just a fraction, her heartbeat pounding in her chest like a warning drum. When she dared to look, the air shimmered, revealing glimpses of shadows, figures merging and pulsating in the gloom. Sarah's mind spun. This wasn't just a game, they weren't alone. Mom! Tommy's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the tension with razor-sharp clarity. I know, she stammered, desperately searching for a way out. But even as she tried to focus, the whispers crescendoed, pulling her deeper into the unknown. Every instinct told her to run, yet she hesitated. The shadows swayed with an eerie grace, almost beckoning her forward. Join us became a mantra, morphing from threat to promise. And then it happened. The first of the figures broke free of the shadows, lunging into the beam of silver moonlight like a distorted reflection of the Silver Guardian. Once majestic, now twisted, its features grotesque and elongated, a mockery of life. Its eyes, hollow and black, locked onto Sarah, drawing her will like a moth to a flame. Tommy, we need to go now! Panic surged through her, and she gripped his hand tighter, adrenaline igniting her limbs. With a swift turn, Sarah yanked him to his feet, but the darkness surged forward, hungry and relentless. Join us. The voice was now louder, an insistent chant that echoed through her mind, drowning out her thoughts. Run! Sarah shouted, shoving Tommy ahead of her, urgency clawing at her throat. They sprinted through the trees, every brush of leaves and snap of branches behind them heralding the pursuit. The movement felt like a blur, adrenaline heightening every sound. Mom, I can't! Tommy cried, stumbling over roots in the shadows. Keep moving! She urged, her heart racing faster than their feet could carry them. She chanced to look over her shoulder. The grotesque creature was there, slipping through the trees, its shape distorting like a nightmare-given form. Other figures whispered behind it, their voices thickening in the air, feeding into the terror that gripped Sarah's heart. Join us. The words knotted in her stomach. They were no longer just hunting her, they were trying to trap her mind. She felt the weight of their wretched desires pressing in on her, their need cloaked in dark promises. In her frantic search for safety, she noticed a faint light beyond the trees. There! She pointed, determination surging through her veins. Mom! Tommy's voice cracked, awash with fear and exhaustion. She could see the trepidation in his eyes, and a wave of guilt smacked her square in the chest. It wasn't just his life, it was their lives. Almost there. Just a little more. The light grew brighter, an urgent beacon through the darkness. But just as hope fluttered to the surface, the ground beneath them shifted, a dark chasm ripping apart the earth. No! Sarah stumbled, yanking Tommy back, but the shadows came alive around them, whipping like a storm. The figures surged into the opening, pulling Sarah and Tommy toward the very heart of darkness. Join us! The whisper became a roar, echoing in the void as the ground tilted, and she felt a terrifying grip seize her. In that brief moment, she thought of the Silver Guardian, desperately hoping it wasn't too late for them. She didn't realize the depth of what lay between the whispers and what she feared most until the darkness began to swirl around them, pulling them deeper into the unknown. Tommy's grip slipped from her hand as he was yanked back. Mom, help! No! She lunged forward, her heart fracturing with the sound of his cry as the shadows swarmed. As she reached out, the darkness closed in, and she felt a sudden stillness a moment before the plunge. And somewhere, buried deep within this nightmare, a flicker of fear ignited. What awaited them at the edge of the abyss? The descent into darkness felt infinite. Sarah's heart raced, pounding violently against her ribs as she reached for Tommy, her fingers clawing at air. The shadows caught him, a swarming mass hungry for flesh and fear. Desperation clawed at her throat, choking her. Tommy! She cried, but her voice echoed into the void, swallowed by the night. The shadows curled around her like serpents, slick and cold. She could feel the breaths of the figures swirling around her, breathing in her fear with such hunger it made her stomach churn. They whispered promises, tales of eternities spent in the darkness, tales laced with despair and joy intertwined. It was maddening. With every ounce of willpower still pulsing through her veins, she forced her body to move, fighting against the grip that seemed to bind her, pressing her deeper into the shadows. She had to save Tommy. There was no choice to make. Through the haze of panic, she remembered the flicker of light, a promise that had seemed so close. She focused on it, clenching her jaw, refusing to surrender. The figures hissed, their voices rising with irritation, but she pushed forward. The bright light beckoned, a soft glow against the looming abyss. But the ground was treacherous now, shifting and swirling beneath her feet. Branches snapped with grotesque cracks, roots coiling like evil tendrils from a horror tale. She sidestepped them with relentless determination, her bare feet trusting the darkness beneath her. Then she heard whispers again, closer this time, brushing against her mind like icy breath. Leave him be. They coaxed, each word a sweet poison. Eternal freedom awaits. No! She shouted, each syllable infused with defiance. Her mind screamed louder than the whispers. She wasn't giving up. Not while Tommy was out there. With renewed determination, she squinted against the dark. The edges of the abyss glimmered, beckoning. But that light, it felt like a cruel joke now. As she stumbled forward, she felt something pulse beneath her feet, like something was stirring deep within the earth, each beat growing louder, thrumming like an excited heart. Mom! Tommy's voice was frantic, a distant echo just beyond her reach. Hold on! I'm coming! The light seemed to pulse in response, urging her onward, even as the shadows crept closer. She could see them now, the grotesque faces forming from the darkness. Each one was marked with vacant expressions, empty but full of shadows drawn from the very depths of human fear. Join us, they sang, their voices hauntingly melodic. The rhythmic chanting drowned out her thoughts, leaving only an echoing emptiness. Every second felt like an eternity. The shadows crept closer, hands reaching for her, slick and cold, fingers like talons ready to drag her back into nothingness. With an anguished cry, she surged forward, pushing through the nightmare. And then, she felt it. A pulse of energy radiating from her chest, as if the Silver Guardian was with her, urging her to move. She clenched a fist around that hope, digging deep into her psyche. Tommy! She screamed again, louder now, fueled by every ounce of love in her heart. But no sooner had she cried out when the ground seemed to grow angry. The chasm pulsated, rippling like a black water surface disturbed. The shadows slackened momentarily, whispering to one another, their attention diverted. Taking advantage of the moment, Sarah sprinted hard, launching herself toward the light, a shooting star desperate for dawn. The figures hissed, anger echoing in the dark. As she broke through the edge of the abyss, she lunged into the blinding light, but instead of the safety she yearned for, the light burned, corroding her skin like acid. A scream escaped her lips, guttural and raw. What had she done? In the chaos, a hand grasped hers, cold as death. It was Tommy, but his eyes were dull, devoid of the spark she cherished. The shadows circled tighter, drawing closer, promising companionship in the eternal night. Sarah, Tommy breathed, his voice detached. Join us, her heart shattered. In that moment, she realized the true horror. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were at the brink of a choice, one that could seal their fate forever. The light began to fade as the shadows spun around them, entrapping them in a web of despair, and then everything went black. What salvation could she find in this maze of despair, where hope and nightmares intertwined? The darkness swallowed them whole, an oppressive silence settling in around Sarah and Tommy. It felt like drowning in shadows, an eternal night where even fear had no voice. Sarah's heart raced, a desperate drumbeat in the suffocating black as she reached for Tommy, her fingers grasping at the thin air where he should have been. "Tommy!" she cried, her voice echoing fruitlessly, a ghostly plea lost in the void. Panic jolted through her body, forcing her to strain her ears for a sound, a whisper, anything. "Mom!" His voice was faint, drifting like a lost echo through the fog of shadows. Relief and dread battled in her chest. She focused, willing her eyes to pierce the darkness. Inch by inch, she felt her surroundings shift, the emptiness twisted with an eeriness, as if the very ground beneath her was holding its breath. "Hold my hand," she shouted, though she couldn't see him. What felt like forever passed before a soft grip tightened around her fingers, cold but real. Relief washed over her like sunshine breaking through the gloom. She pulled Tommy close, locking her gaze on his frightened eyes, still glowing with the remnants of innocence but clouded by despair. "Stay with me," she said, her voice fierce. "We can't let them take you." In that moment, she centered all her determination on him, the bond stronger than the creeping weight of shadows. The whispering figures loomed nearby, restless and insistent. But now Sarah felt a flicker of defiance spark to life within her. "We have to move now," she urged, guiding Tommy through the squirming darkness, where the weight of their fears pressed against their lungs. "Where?" he asked, his small voice quaking. "Anywhere but here." Her voice rose, fueled by a surge of desperation as she pushed through the swirling mass of shadows, determined not to lose him again. If she could just find an exit, a way to escape this nightmare, then maybe hope could be theirs once more. Suddenly, the dark figures surged forward, their faces twisted with need, their voices rising into a chorus. Join us, the song of the shadows seemed to dig into her mind, wrapping her thoughts in chilling promises of acceptance, eternal unity far too enticing for any mother to dismiss. For an instant, doubt crept into Sarah's heart. But then, the memory of Tommy's laughter pushed its way into her consciousness, piercing the insistent chant like a sharp blade. "No!" she shouted defiantly. "You don't control us." With fierce determination, she surged forward, dragging Tommy alongside her. In response, the shadows recoiled, as if her refusal burned them. Blood pounding in her ears, she stumbled through a ghostly mist, chasing the whisper of light she sensed nearby. "Tommy, look!" A flicker appeared in the distance, shimmering as if inviting them closer. It pulsed with warmth, filled with an energy that turned despair into courage. Together, they tore toward it, through thickets of creeping shadows that reached for them, clawed at their feet. "Keep running," she urged, keeping her eyes locked on the light. If they could just reach it, they might escape this nightmare. With every desperate stride, the pull of the whispering shadows faded. The light grew brighter, almost tangible. And finally, As they broke free from the crushing shadows, it enveloped them. A brilliant flash of warmth surged around them, absorbing the darkness like sunlight through fog. The shadows shrieked, their voices lost in the brightness, as they felt the oppressive grip release. Sarah shielded her eyes against the blinding glow and felt Tommy's hand clasped tightly in hers. When the light faded, they stood together on solid ground, and the suffocating dark was gone. As her eyes adjusted, she gasped. They were outside, standing in the spacious parking lot of the Walmart. Relief flooded through her, turning anxiety into hope. "Mom! We made it!" Tommy gasped, disbelief painting his face. "Yes. We're safe," she exclaimed, pulling him into a fierce embrace, feeling the warmth of his small frame reassure her weary heart. But even as they stood in the warm glow of the moon, an unease settled in her chest. Was it truly over? What about the shadows that lingered just out of sight? With a shaky breath, she scanned the dark edges of the lot where the trees swayed, memories lingering, shadows still whispering. "Mom," Tommy's voice quivered again, pulling her from her thoughts. "Let us get to the car. Quickly!" she insisted, glancing at the vehicle that looked both welcoming and distant now. Even as they ran, Sarah felt the echoes of the darkness behind them, lingering like an uninvited guest, waiting patiently. But she wouldn't let it win. Together, they reached the car, plunging into the relative safety she had longed for. As she started the engine, she felt a warmth sweep through her. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. As she pulled out of the parking lot and onto the road, a vow echoed in her heart. No matter the darkness that followed, they would face it together. The night of shadows was behind them, but the bond shared forged on through the suffocating grip of despair would guide them onward. "Let us go home, Tommy," she whispered, turning to him with a shaky smile, and as they drove away, she felt a sense of resolve wash over her. No matter the darkness that may come, they would confront it, side by side. But for now, they were safe. And that was enough. If you found this wild journey compelling, you need to subscribe now. Hit that subscribe button immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive story that will blow your mind. Smash that like button now to help feed the algorithm and push this content out there for other fans to discover. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this crazy ending. I want to hear all your thoughts. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this thrilling conclusion. Let us keep this community growing strong.